Hello everyone, I'm Abu Bakr, a PhD student in the University of Aberdeen on my second year. First, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present my work in this conference. So today we are going to talk about mobile wireless sensor network deployment problem and how we are going to tackle this problem using our PhysArm inspired algorithm. The first question that might come to your mind, what is PhysArm? PhysArm polycephalum is an example of a single cell slime mold. They have some similarities with fungus, but they are not. They inhabit shady, cool and moist areas. They sense gradients of chemoattractants and repellents and forms a yellowish vascular network. During their foraging for food resource, they perform two simultaneous self-organized processes, exploration and exploitation. In this figure, as we can see, the slime mold is this yellow mass, and the rest white points are food resources. By the way, they adore oats. Here, PhysArm sense gradients of chemoattractants and repellents and forms a yellowish vascular network. This phase is called exploration phase. And once they find a food resource, they begin to shrink their network to find the optimal path toward food resource. As you have seen, PhysArm demonstrates an excellent ability in network construction without central consciousness in the process of foraging. They don't actually have brains, but with simple communication they were able to make this marvelous intelligent behavior. This has inspired many researchers to come up with novel models for unconventional computational methods capable of solving many NP-hard problems. As you can see here, this is a real biological experiment where they made a simulation of Tokyo map. They placed all cities at food resources, and then PhysArm start to forage for food and expand, shrink to make an optimal network. PhysArm has complex social behaviors including cooperation and competition. Leti and Beckman stated that PhysArm is capable of making complex foraging decisions based on the trade-off between their motivation, food patch quality, and in the presence of competitors. Many mathematical models have been proposed to understand PhysArm foraging behavior. However, to the best of our knowledge, all these models have not modeled PhysArm behavior under competition. We think that modeling such behavior can lead to the development of a more effective and novel intelligent algorithms that have an optimal balance between social cooperation on one side and the competition on the other side. This may avoid falling into local optima. Now we will talk a little introduction about mobile wireless sensor networks. Here is a typical mobile wireless sensor network after deployment and dispersion. Mobile wireless sensor network are simply wireless sensor network, but the sensors are mobile. This sensor, for example, they are mobile. They collect ground data from a specific area and transmit it to the base station through one or multiple hop, like this way. They are used for various purposes such as battlefield monitoring, bioenvironmental surveillance, earthquake observation, and wildlife reservoir. So our problem here is After initial random deployment, it is required to disperse sensors autonomously without central control and with the objective of maximizing the coverage, establishing network connectivity, and avoid obstacles. Here's an example. We have a farm and we would like to monitor it. As you can see, we have obstacles like lakes here, maybe thick trees, whatever these thick trees, that block sensor movement and communication. So again, the problem here is that we require sensors to autonomously cover the whole area, like 90% or something like that, with the least number of sensors. As you can see, here's the list of sensors. They will move autonomously to cover the whole area. This is just an example anyway. As you can see here, the field of communication. In this case, they are fully connected. So, a motivation and aim. The Physarum characteristics have great potential in dealing with graph optimization problems in dynamic environment, such as in mobile wireless sensor network. In this research, we proposed an energy-aware distributed self-deployment algorithm for dynamic deployment of sensors nodes after initial random in order to avoid obstacle and territory boundaries, enhance coverage, reestablish the connectivity of the network. So our proposed algorithm, first, the area we will first for the hexagonal deployment. The area will be dynamically tessellated by regular hexagons. These hexagons, with its side is equal to the sensing radius. The centers of this hexagon will be identified as interest points to attract the sensors. An example here of our farm, the area here will be tessellated as regular hexagons. It is proved that this kind of nodes placement will minimize overlap, redundancy, and maximize the coverage using minimum number of nodes. This algorithm is based on possible heuristics that Physarum use in complex foraging decisions based on the trade-off between their motivation for food and in the presence of competitors. We formulated a 2D hexagonal cellular automata reaction diffusion model where multiple Physarums as a representation for the sensors will compete for food resources as a representation for our interest points. Each Physarum has its own autonomous behavior. They react to each other and their local environment. So, kind of chemo attraction forces to the food resources, repulsion negative forces between the competing Physarums exerted to each other, and lastly the repulsion negative forces exerted by the obstacles and boundary walls. We have addressed a 1% decrease in sensor energy with each movement step. Simply, sensor superiority in competition is directly proportional to the sensor energy, which is a key point for load balancing and will give a priority to less used sensor to process messages and replace failed nodes. Experimental simulation results. In this experiment, sensors were randomly placed in a 2D hexagonal grid where center of each hexagon will act as an interest point to attract sensors in the presence of obstacles. We have conducted 3 experiment scenarios where the number of scenarios will be equal to: first, one fold, 1.5 fold, and 2 folds of the number of interest points. As you can see here, there's sensors in the red color, and yellow is an empty interest point, and the blue one is an occupied interest point, and the gray one is an obstacles. Here's a simulation. As we can see, the sensor move and occupy the interest points, and they exert repulsion force amongst each other and the obstacles. It disperse till they cover most, maybe, yeah, till they cover 90% of the network. So in our experimental results, this figure showed the average result of 50 run per scenario. It demonstrated that high coverage with minimal move overhead, and as you can see that the results of the 3 scenarios are nearly the same for the 1.5 fold and 2 fold. In conclusion, this study we presented a novel physics-inspired energy-aware model for dynamic deployment of mobile sensor nodes in the presence of obstacles. This model simulated physics complex for aging behavior based on hexagonal cellular automata and reaction diffusion system, where multiple physics will sense the surrounding environment and will compete over the interest point based on chemo attraction and repulsion forces exerted by obstacles and competing physics. Simulation results have demonstrated the high coverage performance of the model with the minimal move overhead, even in the presence of obstacles with the least number of sensors. I would like to, this research is supported by Elphinstone PhD scholarship, University of Aberdeen. Other authors are supported by the Royal Society International Exchange Program. Thank you.